Hello guys, Rasmus here. We are finally back on this channel. We have been away for quite a long time, and we have some reasons that it will be explained further on Creepypasta Radio. But I took my time and made this Christmas holiday special for you all. The perfectly well-behaved boy, as you see in the title. So, what can I do and what can I say more than Merry Christmas to you all, and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas nights. There was once a very well-behaved 8-year-old boy named Miles. He did all the things that good children are supposed to do, nearly all the time. He ate all vegetables, unless they were carrots. He completed all of his school assignments, except for that one time he forgot to finish his homework. He was always nice to his friends, unless you can count that time when he yelled at his schoolmate, Tony, and he never spoke back to his parents or got mad at them. With very rare exceptions. Yes, he was nearly perfect. And he was a joy for his parents to raise. Almost all the time. That boy existed more than 30 years ago. In a manner of speaking, he still exists. That boy, he is me. And he will always be a part of who I am. I can remember every transgression I made as a child. Not only because there were so few of them, but because they ended up shaping my life in a way you could never imagine. Of all the misdeeds, the one that stands out the most is the very last time I yelled at my parents. The funny thing is, even though I can remember being mad, and I can remember every word I said, I don't recall exactly why I was upset. When I try to think of the reason, it's like looking at a blank sheet of paper in my mind. I can tell you that it wasn't anything that my adult self would find weird. But I know I felt important at the moment. It was 2 days before Christmas, and the words I spoke felt foreign as they came out of my mouth. Probably because I had never said anything like that. Quite like it before. Go away! I don't want to see you anymore! I don't want you to talk to me ever again! I could see the hurt in my parents' eyes as I unleashed my tirade towards them. Even now I'm surprised at what a profound effect the words had from my 8-year-old self had taken on them. Their dismay was mixed with obvious shock upon hearing me lash out. My mother had a look on her face that was confused, sad and angry all at the same time. Father was harder to read, but I knew he wasn't happy. Sadly, the looks on their faces are among the last memories I have of my parents. Their distraught scowls are burned in my mind. Two visages that are now permanent parts of my psyche. By the time that Christmas Eve came around, all had been forgiven. Whatever the issue had been, it was resolved. My mother cooked a special ham dinner, and we had a roaring fire going on. The house was warm and extra comfortable. And in the hours after dinner I sat and sipped from a mug of hot cocoa with peppermints. I no longer believed in Santa Claus, but that didn't stop me from feeling naturally happy and excited. I fell asleep that night staring at the dazzling lights and shiny ornaments that clung to our Christmas tree. I slightly remember my father carrying me to my bedroom and giving me a little kiss on the forehead. I woke up later that night to the feeling that someone was poking their fingers into my back. Wake up, kid. It was a voice I've never heard before. A man's voice with a slight drawl. My eyes opened widely as I instinctively rolled out of the bed in an outright panic. I fell to the floor and screamed for my father. I was trapped in a corner of my bedroom. I could see the man's silhouetted figure looming clearly in front of me. A small red glow came from a cigarette in his hand. I froze in fear of the stranger who had invaded my home. The man spoke to me again. "Quiet, kid. He can't hear you right now, anyway." He put the cigarette to his lips and inhaled deeply. As he did, his face was illuminated by the red glow, and I could see his deep-set eyes, his dirty fingers and his long black hair. "But kid, I can hear you. I can hear you better than anybody. In ways you can't even understand." He pointed at the side of his forehead as he spoke. I didn't reply, but even though my fear, I couldn't help but wonder who the man was. He nodded as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. "So you'd like to know who I am? Well, the guy who's turned into your mind. I'm the guy that's been around for a long time, and most importantly, I'm the guy who gives kids what they ask for." He looked straight into my eyes, invading my mind and reading my thoughts. "No, kid, I ain't Santa." He was agitated. "You stupid? Do I really look like that fat fucker? No. I'm much better. I don't judge, and I don't discriminate. I give kids what they ask for. The good kids and the bad kids." I finally found the courage to speak, even though he seemed to have no trouble answering my questions before I could even ask them. I didn't ask for anything." My voice trembled as I spoke. "Sure you did. You wanted your parents to go away. I heard that loud and clear. Loud and clear. Not very nice of you. I'd say that makes you a bad little boy. But don't worry. Like I said, I don't discriminate." "But I don't want them to go away." He shook his head. "You said it. You meant it at the time. I heard it. I don't hear all the kids, just some of them. And I heard you, loudest of them all." Tears began streaming down my face, but their presence didn't seem to change the visitor's demeanor towards me. "Well, kid, I just wanted to meet you and see whose voice had been screaming in my head the past few days." He turned and started walking towards the door. "I gotta get started. It's time to give you your little gift. And I get a gift to myself too. Merry fucking Christmas, kid." He flicked his cigarette into the corner of my bedroom as he passed through the doorway, repeating himself as he walked down the hallway in the direction of my parents' bedroom. "Merry fucking Christmas. Merry fucking Christmas. Merry fucking Christmas. Merry fucking Christmas." The door to my bedroom shut, even though the man himself had made no effort to close it. I screamed out loud for my mother and father. To this day I still have no idea if they heard me. I wish I could tell you that I bravely ran out of my bedroom to warn them. But I just sat huddled in the corner, crying and afraid. I listened intently for sound of a struggle or for my parents yelling, but I couldn't hear anything. Hours passed and I could see the outside sky turn from black to grey, then to orange. I waited for my mother and father to find me. The orange sky turned blue as the day wore on, but they never came. An absolute silence hung over the house, yet still I sat there. It was well into the afternoon when I finally left my room. I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I tiptoed slowly to my door and opened it, only a few inches looking out from inside my room. The house appeared normal. Everything that I could see was in place. I pulled the door open almost the whole way, almost expecting the man from the night before to jump out of me. But that didn't happen. My voice broke through the silence. "Mom? Dad?" No response. Trying my best to stay quiet, I walked slowly down the hallway towards my parents' bedroom. Their door was ajar. "Dad?" I put my hand on their door. "Mom?" I pushed it open and looked inside. I don't actually remember what I saw. To be clear, I'm perfectly aware of the fate that befell my parents based on what was told to me later on. But I have no memory of the actual night. But I have no memory of the actual sight that I witnessed during that one awful moment. It was a traumatic event that my sane mind had blocked out. Even today, when I recreate the events of that night, in my dreams, the scene fades to white as I push the door open. My next memory is of me laying down in the street directly outside my house, screaming and flailing my arms wildly. The Porter family who lived next door witnessed my distress through their living room window. Mr. Porter exited his house and rushed over to me. He could tell something was seriously wrong. "They're dead!" is all I could say. I repeated it again and again. Mrs. Porter followed closely behind her husband and comforted me as he went to check inside my house. A minute later, he exited and promptly vomited in the bushes. Nobody ever told me the whole story of what they found in that bedroom. At least not directly. It was explained to me that a very bad person had broken into my house and murdered my parents, even though I already knew as much. What was held back from me at the time is the fact that they had been decapitated. The cuts were clean, almost surgically. Both bodies were laying on the bed as if they'd been asleep when it happened. The worst part was that their head was missing, not to be found anywhere. Their bodies were sliced open, and strange symbols were drawn on the wall in blood. Other than the carnage itself, absolutely no physical evidence was discovered at the scene. No one's fingerprint, stray hair, or footprint was left behind. Nothing. The police listened to my story once I was ready to talk. I found out later I was considered to be an unreliable witness, mostly because the details of my story didn't match with the lack of physical evidence. A specially trained detective and my new therapist sat down with me to review what I had said to the police earlier.
The man, he wasn't wearing gloves?
I shook my head no. I clearly remembered the cigarette in his hands, and there was no glove.
And he threw the cigarette on the ground when he was done smoking it?
I nodded yes.
And he closed your door when he left your room?
I shook my head no, then thought about it and nodded my head yes. I wasn't really sure. The detective took notes as I talked. He nodded his head pleasantly, but even then I could see the strange look on his face when I told him that the man had read my thoughts. The one thing I never told the police was that 2 days before the murders. The one thing I never told the police was that 2 days before the murder, I asked my parents to be gone. The sketch artist came by afterwards. He started off by drawing some Smurfs for me. Then he slowly began working me up to the task of remembering what the murder looked like. I appreciated his efforts. When he was done, the picture looked somewhat like how I remembered the man, but not exactly. I was taken in by my mother's sister, Aunt Janine, and her husband, my Uncle Anton. As unlucky as I had been with the deaths of my parents, I have to say that I was nearly as lucky to have those two in my life. Other than my parents, they were probably the best people in the world who I could possibly